It's strange, isn't it? How a room full of memories can feel emptier than an empty room. And how silence can be so loud after 70. This story begins with Mr. Yusuf, a 73-year-old retired teacher who had just lost his wife, the only person he truly shared his day-to-day life with for over 4 decades. His children had moved abroad years ago. Good jobs, busy lives, and though they loved him, their calls were irregular and their visits even more so. After the funeral, the house felt hollow. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the occasional sound of a passing car. These became the only companions in Yusuf's home. Subscribe to our channel Wisdom of Older Age, where we share real stories, healing rituals, and life-changing truths for those walking the path of solitude and wisdom. Part 1. The Empty Chair and the Quiet Clock. A story begins. At first, Yusuf didn't know how to handle it. He would get up, pour tea into 2 cups by habit, then look at the second one and sigh. He'd sit in his armchair for hours, watching the world move outside his window. People laughing, walking, arguing, embracing, and he felt like he was on the other side of a thick glass wall. There, but not really part of it. This is the moment many older adults experience. A feeling not of physical isolation, but of emotional invisibility. The world continues, but you start to feel like a forgotten page in a book no one reads anymore. Then one morning, something broke the routine. He spotted a child staring at him from across the street. Curious, not afraid. She waved. He waved back. It was a fleeting moment, but it stirred something inside him. He remembered what it felt like to be seen. That's when he realized, loneliness doesn't start when people leave. It starts when you stop reaching for the world outside. Yusuf made a silent promise to himself that day. I will do one thing each day that connects me with life again. And that single decision began to change everything. Yellow Circle Part 2, Morning Rituals that Restore the Soul. The next day, Yusuf woke up and made just 1 cup of tea. He walked slowly to the park near his home, carrying a small notepad. He sat on a bench and started to write. Not to anyone in particular, but just to life. His first line was simple. Dear life, today I came outside. The sun was warm, and the birds didn't seem to mind that I was watching. Every day after that, he repeated this ritual. Tea, park, paragraph. Sometimes it was a memory. His wedding day, the way his wife smiled when their son took his first steps. Sometimes it was what he observed around him. A dog chasing its tail, the rustle of dry leaves, the smell of someone's perfume passing by. These tiny entries became his lifeline. Slowly, strangers became familiar faces. The woman walking her dog began to greet him. A young man who jogged every morning nodded at him. Children from a nearby school giggled and called him Uncle Notebook. What changed? Yusuf wasn't doing anything extraordinary. He was simply showing up. That's the first step to breaking loneliness. Consistency in presence. Loneliness feeds on stillness and silence, but presence invites possibility. He didn't wait to feel better to start living. He started living to feel better. He gave himself a new identity, not as a lonely man, but as someone who had something to observe, something to write, and something to look forward to every day. He wasn't waiting for someone else to fill his life. He was building a new one paragraph at a time. This practice of showing up and reflecting became a sacred ritual, not just for Yusuf but for others who started noticing him. Because sometimes, your healing becomes a beacon for someone else who doesn't yet know how to begin. Yellow Circle Part 3. Contribution is the antidote to invisibility. One cold January morning, Yusuf saw the street cleaner, Kareem, shivering as he worked. Without much thought, Yusuf poured a cup of tea from his thermos and offered it to him. Kareem smiled, grateful. You're the first person to ever do that, he said. That one act sparked a bond. They started having 5-minute chats each morning. Kareem would share stories about his family back home. Yusuf would share lines from his journal. Yusuf had stumbled onto a powerful truth. Contribution breaks the wall of loneliness. You don't need to give money, just presence. A smile, kind word, a warm drink. So he began baking small batches of muffins once a week. Not to sell, not to impress, just to give. He offered them to people in the park, the newspaper vendor, even shy teens hanging around. He was becoming part of the ecosystem of his community. Before long, people started approaching him. A young woman sat beside him and said, "My grandfather died last year. You remind me of him." A middle-aged man asked him for advice about his marriage. Local students brought him their poetry. Yusuf began to keep a second journal, titled "The People I Meet." Every name, every story was sacred. Yusuf realized that being alone is different from being disconnected. The more he gave of his time, his attention, and his kindness, the more he felt rooted. People began to depend on his presence. And he learned something profound. When people rely on you, you stop feeling like a burden and start feeling like a blessing. Loneliness was no longer a curse. It had become a doorway to connection. Yellow Circle Part 4. Move your body, move your life. But it wasn't just mental or emotional rituals that helped Yusuf. It was physical movement. He realized that after 70, the body has two options: stiffen into stillness or soften into strength. He chose the second. Each morning, after writing and socializing, Yusuf began to walk. First 5 minutes, then 10, then 30. He didn't walk for fitness, he walked for life. He walked where people were, even if he never talked to them. He became familiar with the smells of the fruit market, the rhythms of the street musicians, the shouts of school children on lunch break. This passive contact with life kept his senses alive. Later, he joined a local senior center and began practicing Tai Chi, slow, graceful movements that taught him balance, breath, and flow. He would laugh at himself when he made mistakes, but he never missed a class. That joy of movement started to unlock emotions he hadn't processed: grief, joy, even forgotten passions. He felt himself returning to his own body after years of emotional paralysis. He also started small projects around the house: planting herbs, rearranging photo albums, learning how to play a simple song on an old harmonium. Every act of movement gave his brain a message: I am still here. I still matter. Loneliness thrives when we remain still, because stillness often invites sadness. But movement, however small, signals to the world and to ourselves that we are still participating in life. And that participation creates momentum, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Yellow Circle Part 5. The Symphony of Solitude and Your New Beginning. Years later, Yusuf's routine was no longer just something to do. It was his lifestyle. Children called him Grandpa Writer. Vendors offered him free fruit. A local artist painted his portrait. He even gave a small speech at a senior center, titled, "What I Learned About Life After Everyone Left." Here's what he told them: when you're old and alone, life won't come knocking. You have to invite it in daily, with tea, with writing, with movement, with kindness. He didn't have a wife anymore. His children still called only now and then. But Yusuf was no longer lonely. He was full of memories, of faces, of meaning. And you can be too. Maybe your life feels too quiet right now. Maybe you sit by a window wondering what comes next. But I promise you this: if you choose one small ritual every day, writing, walking, greeting a stranger, sharing a story, you will begin to stitch a new life together from the threads of today. Bellhop Bell. So if this message spoke to your heart, don't just let it end here. Subscribe to our channel Wisdom of Older Age, where we share real stories, healing rituals, and life-changing truths for those walking the path of solitude and wisdom. Because remember, your golden years aren't the end. They're your time to finally become who you were always meant to be.